start with this. Steffi Bull posted this via his Instagram account. It reads, "Unfortunately, Heather Hardy has sustained a wrist injury. We wish her a speedy recovery. As we know, more than anyone, these things come with the job. Terri Harper must be the unluckiest girl in boxing. It's been 16 months of heartache. Fortunately for us, we got Matchroom taking care of things. Terri will still be boxing on the 12th of March. There's lots of girls at world level who have fights scheduled and available. Support is easy to obtain when you're at the top. It comes naturally. Support is most needed when you're at your lowest, and after the November defeat, this is where we need support. As always, the support coming to Nottingham has been phenomenal. Around 500 tickets personally sold. Belter, new weight, and a new belt coming home." That's right, Terri Harper is rebounding off the loss. Heather Hardy is out, and hopefully
Terri Harper is attempting to rebound off the loss to Alicia Baumgartner last year.
this year, she was supposed to be boxing Heather Hardy, who's attempting to rebound off a loss herself, the loss to Jessica Kamara last year, but unfortunately Heather's out, and hopefully somebody else will be, and I'm sure that Matchroom can find someone within the next 2 weeks to box Terri Harper on this kind of notice. I'm sure there's somebody willing. I'm sure there's someone out there.
And whilst digesting this unfortunate news,
I came across this tweet from Greece's own Kalia Karuni, who stated, "My manager, Alessandro Gelki, and I, we have the best fight offer, and I was waiting for this for a long time. Karma. But let's fight this Saturday first." This Saturday, Kalia Karuni is going to be returning to action against Brazil's own...
she's going to be boxing Simone de Silva.
very familiar journeywoman that's boxed a lot of good fighters, boxed a lot of good names. Kalia Karuni is attempting to rebound off the loss to Carla Torres.
A loss she suffered very recently on Robson Conceição's undercard.
That was a top-ranked card. She's supposed to be boxing Simone de Silva this Saturday to get back in the winner's bracket, and moving forward, I get the sense that Kalia may have been offered the Terri Harper fight on short notice.
But you see what she's saying. She's saying she's been made a very good offer.
Made some mention of karma, good karma, bad karma, who knows. What we do know is that there actually was some back and forth between Kalia Karuni and Terri Harper some time ago. I think a little over a year. They were trading barbs. And,
Now they're both campaigning in the lightweight division.
is it possible that Kalia Karuni was contacted by the people over there at Matchroom, should she emerge the victor this weekend, to move into a Terri Harper fight next month, in March?
Is that possible?
Yeah, I think it's possible. Think about the situation. The Simone de Silva fight is a tune-up fight. I mean, that's what that is.
That's what it's supposed to be. If they're putting Kalia in there with somebody that has losses in the double digits,
It's so that they can get her back in a winner's bracket, set up something bigger later on, perhaps a Terri Harper fight on a Matchroom show. I think it's entirely possible that Kalia Karuni might end up standing in for Heather Hardy.
think about it. She's already completed a camp for this weekend's fight.
She's already on weight, as she will be, and if she wins that fight with Simone de Silva this weekend, she can move straight into the Harper fight 2 weeks from now. I mean, it does make sense.
Maybe that's the offer Kalia's talking about.
And there are other girls out there besides Kalia Karuni. There's former IBF featherweight champion Jennifer Hahn, who very recently boxed Katie Taylor at lightweight. That was last year. Maybe they can get Jennifer Hahn on the phone. Maybe they can get
Melissa St. Ville, Verena Kaiser,
Anisha Bashir. I mean, it doesn't even have to be somebody particularly interesting, because Terri Harper is rebounding off a loss after all. This is just a setup to get her back in the winner's bracket, to set up something bigger moving forward.
Though I get the sense they might have contacted Kalia based on Kalia's tweet.
I do expect to see Terri Harper box March 12th on the undercard of Leigh Wood versus Mick Conlon. Who against, I don't know, but I do get the sense that it may end up being Kalia Karuni.
And if it ends up being Kalia, I'm okay with that.
There is some bad blood between them after all, and I'd like to see them settle the score. I'd like to see them hash it out. Let's see what the future holds for the Belter. In other news, per a tweet from Michael Benson, Alexander Usyk on Tyson Fury accusing him of ducking. He was quoted as saying, "He's lying. I never duck anybody. If he wants, I can fight him right now with my bare knuckles in the street. In all my career, I never ducked anybody. I even went to Russia to fight Murat Gassiev, and quite right. Every single alphabet title that Alexander Usyk won, from cruiserweight to heavyweight, is a title that he won on the road."
Since when is Usyk averse to fighting anyone?
Since when does Alexander Usyk shy away from a challenge? Every single alphabet title he ever won, from every single champion he won the titles from, He won it on the road. He won it in their neck of the woods, not his.
All of them, every single alphabet title he ever won.
Every single world champion he beat to get them.
See, this is the part of the fiasco that Tyson Fury's fans don't want to talk about.
And I suppose that since Dillian White has signed the contract and the fight between him and Tyson is supposed to be going down in April, I suppose that all of this is much ado about nothing.
Tyson Fury says he's going into a social media blackout.
In preparation for that Dillian White fight, his handlers are going to be taking care of his social media accounts. He's not going to be doing any more fun uploads the way he's been doing the last couple of days, last couple of weeks. That being said, I don't expect
to see much back and forth between the Fury people and the Usyk people.
Though it is Tyson Fury that got all of this started when he accused Anthony Joshua of being a coward, when he accused Alexander Usyk of ducking him. And Tyson Fury's fans, they would prefer that this stay a Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua, Frank Warren, Eddie Hearn conversation. They'd prefer that it stay that way without addressing what Aegis Klimas said, that it was Tyson Fury.
Aegis Klimas said Tyson Fury was the holdup.
More recently, Alexander Usyk says Tyson Fury's lying.
These two guys aren't normally in these kinds of situations.
That's always stood out to me. From the moment that Aegis Klimas decided to chime in on this entire fiasco between them, Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, Dillian White, just all of it.
Yeah.
From the moment that Aegis decided to chime in and speak his piece, it stood out to me that Aegis Klimas decided to say anything at all when you don't normally see Aegis Klimas in these kinds of back and forth, trading barbs situations. You don't normally see Usyk involved in those kinds of situations either. Usually it's a pretty cut and dry affair when Aegis and Usyk are involved. They're not for the grab-assing.
These guys are all business.
Allow me to refresh your memory. In Eddie Hearn's version of the story, what Tyson Fury wanted was to box in a gimme fight in March. What he wanted was for Dillian White to step aside so he could fight in a gimme fight ahead of what was supposed to be an Usyk fight. That's according to Eddie Hearn. According to Eddie, Tyson didn't want to fight Alexander Usyk next. He wanted an easy one next, in March.
Now, if you don't want to believe it from Eddie, that's fine.
I don't expect you to, and I don't give a shit either way. I don't give a shit, personally. But why has Aegis Klimas come out saying that it was Tyson Fury that was holding up the fight? And why is Alexander Usyk now accusing Tyson Fury of being a liar? Tyson Fury accused Usyk of ducking him, and Usyk has responded by calling Tyson Fury a liar.
When are Tyson Fury's fans going to address that?
I think they'd rather keep this about Anthony Joshua and Eddie Hearn. I think they'd prefer this stay an Eddie Hearn, Anthony Joshua, Frank Warren, Tyson Fury situation. I think that's what they'd prefer because they don't seem to want to address this. What are you going to do now? You're going to call Alexander Usyk a liar? You're going to call him a ducker because of how much ducking he's used to doing?
Because Alexander Usyk ducks fights?
They'd rather not address it because in attempting to, it would make it that much harder to believe what it is Tyson Fury's been running around telling everybody. And you know, it's much ado about nothing at this point anyway, because we know who Tyson Fury's going to be fighting, we know who Dillian White's going to be fighting, and we know who Alexander Usyk is going to be fighting.
Tyson Fury's supposed to be fighting Dillian White, and I'm okay with that.
Anthony Joshua is supposed to be boxing Alexander Usyk for a second time, and I'm okay with that. The story is Eddie Hearn has indicated that Anthony Joshua has made a decision regarding his training team for the Usyk rematch. However, he don't expect him to make an announcement about it until camp officially starts.
So maybe he wants an element of surprise.
Might be what he's going for, and he might need it because Alexander Usyk is no easy assignment. I think it's safe to say that most of us are expecting a more aggressive Anthony Joshua in the second fight, but being aggressive, just being aggressive in and of itself, I mean, if that were all it takes to beat Alexander Usyk, then Derek Chisora would have got it done.
Murat Garcia and Maris Bredas before him.
If that really were all it takes to beat this guy, getting front foot heavy and letting him go.
Curious to find out who's going to be in Anthony Joshua's corner for this thing. I am.
But as far as Alexander Usyk accusing Tyson Fury of being a liar, based on what accusations Tyson Fury made about him, put simply,
Usyk's got more credibility than Fury.
Never mind Eddie Hearn and what Eddie Hearn said, because this ain't about Eddie Hearn as much as you want to make it about him. This is about
Usyk is calling Tyson Fury a liar.
What do you got to say about that? Tyson Fury's fans have been quite comfortable blaming Eddie Hearn and Anthony Joshua for the undisputed heavyweight title fight not happening. But Alexander Usyk, he's calling Tyson Fury a liar. Tyson Fury, who accused him of ducking, the same Tyson Fury, who also said the reason the fight didn't happen was because Anthony Joshua wanted more money. Well, which one is it? Is it that Usyk didn't want to fight you, or that Anthony Joshua wanted more money? Not that it matters, because Usyk's calling you a liar.
And from where I'm sitting, he's got more credibility than you do.
Mostly because Usyk doesn't have the reputation that Tyson Fury has, the reputation for being a walking, talking contradiction.
And from where I'm sitting, he's got more credibility than you do.
Yeah, I'd sooner believe Usyk when he says Tyson Fury is lying than I'd believe Tyson Fury when he says that Usyk is ducking. Usyk isn't known for ducking.
You are known for shooting off at the mouth and contradicting yourself.
Stop me when I tell a lie. In men's super featherweight news, Chris Colbert had this to say. He says, I don't fight for belts. I fight for money and legacy.
Wait a minute.
Aren't the belts a part of the legacy? Chris was quoted as saying, this is what I've been waiting for. There's no better time than right now. This is my time, and I'm going to dominate in this fight. This fight was supposed to pit Colbert, a former interim WBA junior lightweight champion, against Roger Gutierrez for the real WBA belt. But COVID-19 scrapped that contest, prompting former Dominican Olympian Hector Luis Garcia to step in for a Saturday bout in Las Vegas. The winner gets Gutierrez next, and you know who Colbert believes that will be, even if he's not too concerned that the belt isn't on the line this weekend. I don't fight for belts, he said. I fight for the money and my legacy. I still have a job to do next Saturday. I'm still getting paid. After I win, I get to fight again soon for the belt and get paid again for that fight. A meeting with battle-tested Venezuelan Gutierrez would have been nice to not just put Colbert in a position to win a world title, but to see where he stands in the great scheme of things in a division where Oscar Valdez and Shakur Stevenson will be garnering the bulk of headlines this year.
That's right. This is the super featherweight division.
I think Chris is just trying to put his best foot forward and deal with this situation as best as he can, because this was supposed to be a fight of some importance for him. This was supposed to be his chance to become a world champion himself, the way Shakur Stevenson and Oscar Valdez are world champions in this division. Chris stated, when I win this fight, I'm that guy. He said before Gutierrez withdrew from the bout. I've told you forever. I'm that guy. I was born that guy. I'm just going to continue to prove that, and whatever comes next, comes next. I don't really know anything about Garcia, he said. I know he's got 2 arms and 2 legs, and beyond that, I expect him to bring his A game, because he has to against me. There's no way I'm letting him come in as a late replacement and beat me.
You can't say you don't fight for belts, but at the same time say you fight for legacy. The belts are a part of your legacy.
Chris Colbert stated, I'm all about making adjustments. I've had opponent replacements happen before, and I know this is part of the business of boxing. I just have to roll with the punches, make lemonade out of these lemons, and do what I do on February 26th, which is this upcoming Saturday, this weekend.
Listen, he's got to make it through this fight.
If he aspires to be in the same conversations as Shakur Stevenson, Oscar Valdez, and the winner of their fight, the winner of Kiko Martinez versus Kid Galahad 2, if he aspires to be seen in the same light as those fighters, those champions, he has to become one himself.
And if he wants to get paid the way they're getting paid, he has to become one himself.
He has to become a champion, and in order to do that, he's got to get through this weekend's fight first. It's unfortunate that Gutierrez got COVID and had to pull out, and I'm hoping that, they reschedule that thing, that something happens.
The main event of this card is now a battle of the unbeatens.
Not a world title fight anymore, but that's what it is, a battle of the unbeatens. Unbeaten Chris Colbert versus Hector Garcia. On the undercard,
you're going to see Gary Antoine Russell versus Victor Postol.
That is Gary Russell Jr.'s little brother, and you're going to see super flyweight IBF champion Jerwin Oncajas
against 13-0 unbeaten Fernando Martinez.
All things considered, it wasn't actually a bad card when it was originally put together, when there were 2 world title fights set to go down on this card instead of just one, the Jerwin Oncajas fight.
Why do so many of these young guys separate money from legacy? With the legacy comes the money.
And a big part of being a legacy fighter, being seen as one, is fighting for world titles, unifying them, being that last man standing in a given weight class, in a given division.
These young guys got to get their heads on straight.
The top earning boxers in the sport of boxing, all of them, just so happen to be legacy fighters. Guys that fight for belts. Guys like Canelo Alvarez. Guys like Floyd Mayweather Jr., Manny Pacquiao, Oscar De La Hoya, Felix Trinidad. The list goes on. All those kinds of guys are legacy fighters, and these are the top earning fighters.
These are the kind of fighters that have made the most money in boxing.
Chris is a good fighter, shows promise, but he needs to understand that fighting for belts is a part of his legacy. They're not separate.
He shouldn't look at it that way.
There's a reason that Oscar Valdez versus Shakur Stevenson is a bigger fight than, Colbert versus Garcia, for example. And the reason is those are two unbeaten two-division champions. The both of them, they've been champions at two separate weights. They're champions now, and they're putting their belts on the line. And even if you do know what goes on behind the curtain, behind the scenes, you understand that boxing is a business. Even if that's the case, to the fight fan, those kinds of situations, unification matches and fighting for belts, those are the situations that spark interest in the fans, create that grassroots interest.
I mean, that's where the money comes from.
You have to create a grassroots interest with the fans throughout your career so that they can pay money to see you, tune into your fights at home, and pay to be there, pay to be in attendance. I mean, that's how you generate the revenue. And I'll tell you something.
I mean, ideally, that's how it works.
The separation of the two, belts from legacy, is a bit of a contradiction, an oxymoron almost. I mean, you take Mayweather versus Pacquiao, for example. That fight. There were 3 world titles on the line in that fight. 3 alphabet titles.
3 of them.
Manny Pacquiao's WBO and Floyd Mayweather Jr.'s WBA and WBC titles.
There were 3 world titles on the line in both the Canelo versus Golovkin fights.
And you think about Canelo Alvarez, it's not a coincidence, it's no happenstance that Canelo Alvarez has beaten more active reigning world champions, right now he has, than anybody else out there, been a champion at more weights than most guys. In his last fight, he fought for the undisputed super middleweight championship of the world.
It's not a coincidence that he's done all this and he's the top earning boxer in the world right now.
Do you know a guy with no belt that gets paid the way that Canelo Alvarez gets paid? I mean, the big fights, really big fights, the vast majority of them have alphabet titles on the line. Thus, separating alphabet titles from legacy is a bit of a contradiction. It's a bit of an oxymoron. What does it say about a guy if he can't pick up an alphabet title, if he can't win one from someone? What does it say about a guy if he is out of the world title picture? What kind of interest do you think his fights are going to garner?
Well, there are some anomalies like Khan versus Brook,
where you don't necessarily need an alphabet title to sell the fight because the selling point is the bad blood between the two fighters, but
that ain't the norm.
Chris Colbert would do himself a great service to put more emphasis on fighting for belts, making it to that Gutierrez fight if he wins this one against Garcia, having that rescheduled.
You fight for legacy, you fight for belts, and then come the paydays.